Welcome back to Oakhaven. If you've watched many of our videos, you know that we use the DeWalt electric chainsaw a lot. I like the saw. I prefer an electric chainsaw for what we do, which is more woodland management rather than like firewood cutting, because it's lightweight, it's easy to use, I can charge it up, I'm not having to fill it up with gas. What I really like about it is that I push the trigger and it starts. I don't have to be pulling a cord to get it going and then worrying about the carburetor and emptying gas when I'm not using it and all of that. It's fairly easy to maintain. It's also quieter, so that when I'm out working in the woods, I don't necessarily need to have ear protection. I realize that ear protection is probably a good idea with any power tool, but it is so much quieter than a gas chainsaw that I feel comfortable not using ear protection on it. But, so, we've had this for about 3 years now, and it's easy to get reviews on things where someone buys it on Amazon, they pull it out of the box, and they say, look at this, this is great, I haven't used it yet, but it's the most wonderful thing in the world, I give it 5 stars. Not a very useful review. What I'm hoping to do is give you a little bit of an idea of what this is like. We've had it for a little over 3 years now. What the pluses have been, what the minuses have been, what we need to do as far as maintenance. I like the electric chainsaw. To be honest, I haven't compared it to other brands, but the electric part of it works well for me. So we're going to talk specifically about this one. This is a 16-inch DeWalt electric chainsaw. We've had some issues with it, and right now I need to rebuild some stuff, so I thought we would go through the whole process of what has worn out, how it lasted, and how we repair it. Now, we will put a link to this saw if you want to buy it on Amazon, because we get a little kickback if you buy it on Amazon, but to be honest, the last time I price checked this, it was a lot cheaper other places other than Amazon, and I don't want you to be spending extra money just so we get a little bit of a kickback on it. So if you can find it cheaper someplace else, that's great. If you're buying it new, we have a whole assortment of batteries that, because we have a lot of other DeWalt tools. I would say that the 9 amp hour battery is the best battery for this. It fits in there fine. Wrong way. It fits in there fine, but it lasts longer. The difference between the 9 amp hour and the 6 amp hour, the 9 amp hour is 50% longer running. At the time I was looking at this, there was about a $20 upcharge to get the 9 amp hour battery, which is well worth the expense. Now I will just clarify something. This is a 9 amp hour for a 20 volt system. This saw is a 60 volt system, so it's not actually 9 amp hours, it's a third of that. So this is a 3 amp hour battery in this saw, and this one that says 6 amp hours is actually a 2 amp hour battery when used in a 60 volt system. So sometimes you will see this as a 9 amp hour, sometimes you will see it listed as a 3 amp hour. They're both the same battery, it depends on which tool you're using it in. We're going to do a number of things on this saw. First of all, when you use this saw, the chain holder that came with this saw tightens up to a point and then stops. And the reason for that is that this was designed so that you don't need to have a bar tool to use it. You don't need to have any other extra tools. You've got a crank for tightening the tension, and you've got a plastic button here for tightening up the bar. So when you change the chain or you tighten it up, you can do it without any tools. That's really nice for in the field. The problem is that they don't, because this is kind of cheap plastic, DeWalt made it so that you can only tighten it up to a certain point, and then it spins. I never really feel like that's quite tight enough for holding the chainsaw, particularly if you've got a little bit of dirt in there or sawdust in there that it has to compress. So they've redesigned it, and to be honest, I don't know what comes on the saw when you buy it new, but it seems like now they have one that has a different mechanism for tightening it, and they've solved the problem of the fact that the over tightening part, in that they have an Allen wrench hole in the middle of this one, so that if you do tighten it and then break this off, you can still use it because you can put an 8 Allen wrench in there and work it even without the handle on it, you see that the old one doesn't have that, and if you broke off the little wings here, you'd be up a creek because there's no way to do anything with that. So the reason I'm replacing it is, you know, that's a little bit of an annoyance, not being able to do that, but I've got other reasons to replace it. So if you take off the chain holder, you see there's a sprocket here, and you notice that it's just bare right now. There's just a hole there. I have run this for years with it just that way, and the chain basically balancing on this sprocket, thinking that that's what it was supposed to be, because I didn't remember anything different. It turns out that probably when I first bought this, or maybe not, I don't know, it used to have a washer on there and a little bolt in there that held it in place. It makes perfect sense that they would have something in there to hold that in place. So I would often have the problems where the chain would kick off either of this sprocket or it would loosen up and I would lose the chain. So because I've lost the chain a number of times, I've kind of ripped into this plastic, because it is just plastic. So this has gotten gummed up or torn up a little bit. The inside of this has been torn up a little bit. So my goal is I'm going to replace those two parts, and I've got a new washer and a new nut that I'm going to put on there to hold it in place. Relatively inexpensive to maintain. This piece I bought an ereplacementparts.com. I don't have any affiliate with them. You can find it someplace else. They just seem to be the best price. This was like $4, $4.50 or something like that. Each of these was like $3, so very reasonable. This was a little more expensive, but this was like $12.50, so not bad. I have replaced this once before, the washer and the nut. Again, only like $3 a piece, but then you have to pay shipping and handling, so it got a little bit more pricey. I had it on there for less than half an hour, and I lost both of them again. So this time I'm going to put some Loctite thread locker on the bolt, and hopefully it will stay and work out. So I'm going to go through the process of how we do that, and hopefully that's useful to you if you've had a similar problem or you want to see how this saw works over time. Okay, we're going to start by taking off this plate. So again, it's just a question of loosening the bar holding tool. And then we can take the bar and the chain off. And then we need to get into the screws to take this plate off. They seem to be held in place with a T20 screw, although there's actually in the screw, there's a slot that goes all the way through, so you could use just a regular flathead screwdriver. The screw that came out of this one that has the handle is a longer screw than the other ones here. I think I'll take this and go clean this up and blow it out a little bit. This cleaned up pretty well. I cleaned it out, I blew it out with compressed air. It seems like it's in pretty good shape. There was a lot of gunk in there. You can see that the old plate versus the new plate, you can see where the old blade had torn through, and I think there's just a lot more gunk that it allowed through. This seems to be more solid and seems to protect it a little better. Now I use biodegradable chain oil, which tends to thicken up and get a little gunkier, so that may have added to the the gumminess of it all. I did take out this part. You can see I'm cleaning that up so that that spins a little more freely. It was pretty gunked up inside here. This is kind of interesting to see the mechanism for how the brake works. This is released. It allows us to turn freely. If there's kickback and this blocks off, then this whole thing grabs on. There's a wire around here, this metal band that grabs onto there and doesn't allow it to turn. You redo it and it turns freely again. That was pretty gunked up, but is now functioning pretty well. I did put a little bit of 3-in-1 oil on the chain tensioning pin. I wasn't sure how much oil gets on there from the bar chain oil, but I wanted to make sure that that stayed clear. The chain adjustment button, which was in the old one and is not in the new one, I put this into a vise and popped it out to the bottom, and that came out pretty easily. That, I'm assuming, is just going to pop into the new one without any problem. Or maybe some problem. There we go. So now that turns on there. So it looks like that should all just fit back together in there, and we just need to put new screws in, or put the old screws back in. Remember that the longer screw goes to this one with the handle. Now I'm going to put this washer back on. These are reverse threaded, but I'm going to put some Loctite. This is blue Loctite 242 thread locker, which is not as permanent, but hopefully it will hold this. I'm almost out. There we go. Hopefully that will hold that better. And that's a 10mm. I can put the brake on it. It'll give me a little more oomph to lock that off. That's probably why I couldn't get it tight before that it came off. Okay, that should be better. So the old blade, the end sprocket has seized up. So I'm replacing the blade. I don't know if that's this is the second the second bar that I've gone through since I've owned this. I don't know if that's a problem with the DeWalt bar, or if it's just the way I use it. I tend to use it down close to the ground because I'm cutting the base of honeysuckle and shrubs, so I'm doing a lot more cuts down at ground level, which is the hardest on chains and equipment. It could also be that this saw has a really narrow kerf, so maybe the metal is a little bit thinner here, and this sprocket is a little bit thinner than it would be in something that had a wider kerf. The narrow kerf is really nice because it's cutting less wood to make the same cut. There's less drag on it, and that works really well, particularly for the battery-operated saw. But the sprocket is seized, so I've got a new bar that I bought, and I bought this actually online at Home Depot. Was the best price. And you can see that the the old sprocket is like jammed in there. You can't even see it. And the new one, you can see the sprockets sticking out. So that just wore out. As long as we're doing this up, I did buy a new chain. We sharpen their chains as much as possible, so we'll sharpen them several times, but a new chain isn't that expensive. This again, it's a narrower cut, so you have to be careful to get the right specifications on it. This is an R56 Oregon, and you can see it works for DeWalt. There's 56 links. It's for a 16-inch bar. They're 3/8 of an inch low profile, and then the kerf, the width is 43/1000 of an inch. So there is a diagram on here that shows the way the chain goes on. Chains don't cut as well if you put them on backwards. Okay, that'll go on here on our new sprocket. And I've got, after playing around with it, the bar tensioning pin is way off. There we go. And tighten it up. I've got the... Okay. Looks like that's working. Then we've got the new cover. The new cover slides on, and then that just tightens up on the bolt that the bar is sitting on, and I can tighten that up nice and tight. Flip it over there. Chain's good. Time to give it a try. So that should function almost like a new saw. I feel pretty good about that. Everything looks pretty good. I did want to mention that the bar chain oil, which we use, this biodegradable bar chain oil, it seems to run through bar oil pretty quickly. With my gas-powered engines, I always would, if I add more gas to it, I would add more oil to it, and that kept me in line so that I was always sure that there was bar oil in place. This does have a reservoir that has a clear side on it, so you can see whether or not the reservoir has oil in it. It's a good idea to check that every time you change a battery. I do feel like with the 9 amp hour battery, sometimes I will run out of oil before I run out of power, so I need to keep an eye on that. I don't know if that's just because it was pretty worn before. Maybe it'll run a little differently now. We'll see. Well, hopefully that was useful to you. If you use the saw and you've got comments or you've got other ways that you maintain it, please leave comments in the comments section. If you're interested in how we use it in our maintenance, you know, the Woodland Steward, our goal of our channel is how to manage your woodland. So if you're interested in those types of things, please check out some of our other videos. But thanks for coming along.